All right. Well, welcome to the Abundance2Give podcast. We have an amazing episode set up for you today. I have Denise Gitsham on with us, and thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me. It's good to see you.
How long has it been?
Maybe election night, the night before election.
That was 2016.
Yeah, it's been a long time.
Okay.
Yeah.
So for folks that don't know, Denise has a storied background, ran for Congress, U.S. Congress, based out of the San Diego district. What district?
It was the 52nd, and they've redistricted.
So was that against Scott Peters at that time?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's like my memory picks up.
So good.
But so you know, child of immigrant parents,
Yeah.
mainly mom from China, and then dad from Canada, from what I understand. And that's affected you a lot because it gives you a different perspective on kind of the American dream, what you value, core value, belief systems, all of that, which we're kind of go over today. And I don't know if you're okay with talking because your dad passed.
He just passed about 7 weeks ago.
How are you doing with that? Because that's very recent.
I will say it's amazing what living a life of no regrets with your parents, the peace that it affords you when they pass. My dad, I'm an only child. And so my dad was literally my best friend. And I think if there was one thing you'd ask me, you know, what is it that you are most concerned about in life? It's losing, you know, one of the two people that you know will always be in your corner. And about a year and a half ago, I heard God audibly say, move home, which I thought, well, I'm home. Wow. I'm in San Diego. And he said, no, I want you to go home. And I thought, how strange. I haven't lived there since I was 18. And so I listened and I obeyed. And 3 days later, I was home and I got to walk my dad through the last part of his life. And it was the greatest blessing. I prioritized family over everything. And when he passed, I was in the room with him. I was able to just thank God for his life and thank God for who he was in the room as they were doing Code Blue. And to be there, to have that finality and to say goodbye and to tell him how much I loved him was honestly the greatest blessing.
So do you think that's given you some peace? Because a lot of people don't have that opportunity.
Yeah.
It's either too late or they didn't know, or it was instant, tragic.
There's so much peace. Like in the midst of our grief, which is, it comes and it goes.
Yeah.
There's no question in my mind that it was meant to play out the way that it did. And that I was meant to be there holding his hand and really just loving on him in his last moments on this earth.
Wow. We're getting in deep quick.
Yeah. I'm going to cry.
No, that was amazing. So with your mom escaping communism from China, her father was a general. Is that how I understand it? In the Chinese army or the Chinese?
So there was the good guys and the bad guys. The bad guys were the communists and the good guys were the pro-West democratic regime, which was the Kuomintang versus Mao and the communists. And they, my grandfather always was on the side of the good guys. And my mom they kept losing to the communists. So they were on the run. Every year or 6 months, she had to move from province to province as they kept losing to the communists. And so when she was 9, she moved to Taiwan, and she was actually a TV star there and very glamorous life, but it wasn't home. Home was China.
And so when did she escape? Or not escape, but when did she leave?
1949 was the end of the Civil War between the communists and the nationalists. And so they moved over to Taiwan on one of the last ships. Actually, a lot of families got divided and some were stuck in communist China. But my mom was fortunate to have been able to go over with her whole family.
And then when did she meet your dad?
She met him at a Holiday Inn in Fairfield, California.
What?
My dad was in the Air Force. So my dad is Canadian, but he was 13 when he moved to New Jersey, and he lived just a normal sort of working class New Jersey life. Joined the Air Force at 17.
So I'm just going to make sure you're...
Yeah. He joined the Air Force at 17 to become an American citizen. And he was stationed in China. He was stationed in Japan. He served in Vietnam. And he said, hey, if there's any way that I can get out to California, that's where I'd like to end up. He's a very smart man. So he ended up at Travis Air Force Base, which is where I was born. Okay. And my parents met on a dance floor. My dad lied and said he was a dance instructor. My mom lied and said she couldn't dance. And that was literally their first date on the dance floor, and it never ended for 51 years.
That is incredible.
Yeah, it's an
Especially
incredible
in this
story.
day and age, as we all know, with seemingly relationships that come and go pretty quickly, it seems, and don't have the longevity, maybe for different reasons. But there was a quote that I saw that you kind of live by. I think it's a Bible quote. Is it right? And it says, "To whom much is given, much is required."
Yeah.
Why is that so important to you?
I think that when I think about all the variables, I lived in China. I was actually a missionary in China in college, and I got detained by the police, and I had never appreciated fully what it meant to be American until I was left without any recourse and any ability to fend for myself and any hope for justice at the hands of the Communist Party and their officials in Shanghai. And I think what I realized is that there's a reason that I was born here. There's a reason my parents came, and all of it was working out for my good. And I'm so grateful. Like, you don't really know what you have until you don't have it in a moment. It was an existential awareness of how grateful and blessed I am to be an American. And so that verse really underlies my commitment to public service. I've always been in politics and government, and it's really not because I want to be right. It's because it's not because I want to impose a certain view or perspective of what America is, but it's rather because I want to help this country become the best it can be.
Sure. Now, with that in mind, obviously Georgetown Law University, you went into law, but also public service, and you were a law clerk, right? You worked for the White House as an appointee, all those other things. Talk about that for a minute and how that maybe shaped you during that time.
So I joined George W. Bush's campaign at the age of 22 in 1999. I just graduated from college in Maine, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do, but my professor took me under his wing and said, "You need to go be in politics." And so he sent me out to Austin, Texas. It was such the heyday of Austin before it got all Californiaized. It was so fun. It was so weird. And there was live music every night. And I basically lived the best life working on this campaign and going out every night on 6th Street. And we won after 2 recounts, and I was part of all of that. And then we went to the White House, and then I kind of got bored when I got to Washington almost immediately. I felt like I didn't really understand politics for politics' sake. And when you get to the White House, you're basically campaigning immediately for re-election.
Really?
Yeah, that's really just how, if you look at, every press secretary, everyone's there to push an agenda. And I was there to govern and bring our country together. As you may remember, George W. Bush said, I'm running as a uniter, not a divider. And he tried really hard to hold to that. But I didn't like the political angle of governing. So I got bored, and I went to interview at Fox News exactly 11 days before 9/11.
Wow. And
the minute 9/11 happened, I always wanted to be in the media. I felt like being in the media really shapes culture. And 9/11 happened, and there was nothing that I wanted to do more than serve our country in a meaningful way by supporting the president and what he was doing to help prevent that from ever happening again.
Yeah, I feel like, and maybe you feel the same way, I feel like that was one of the last periods of time where I felt, regardless of your belief systems, everybody was on the same team.
Totally.
Does it feel that way to you?
Yeah, I think so.
I feel like now I'm like, guys, like, we are so much more alike than we're not.
So true.
Democrat, Republican, up, down, I don't really care. Like, I think they all suck.
I think most people do.
They all stink. So we just need to find common ground,
right, and
work together as a country and a people to do what's right. But everybody wants to take their corners.
It's really unfortunate. Yeah, it's unfortunate. Actually, I've been in politics now for, it's getting harder to count, but 24 years. I'm 46, so 24 years. And I actually wrote a book that's coming out in November called Politics for People Who Hate Politics, because there's so many of us who do, including those who are on the inside. And the subtitle is How to Engage Without Losing Your Friends or Selling Your Soul.
Yeah, and to touch on that, because I saw that subline.
Yeah.
But then yesterday when we chatted briefly, you'd mentioned something. It was like, one of your things was how to show up for people we disagree with.
Yeah.
And I almost feel like, not that you're going to change your tagline of your book, but that is an amazing tagline.
Yeah.
Because so often...
Blame the publisher. They wrote it.
But how to show up for people you disagree with. Yeah. Because if everybody is always saying, I'm just going to go hang out with people I like and people that are like me and people that think like me, you're going to be in a nice little conundrum and a little bubble.
It's an echo chamber.
Yeah.
I mean, I have always had friends. 3 of my 5 bridesmaids were Democrats. That means 3 of my 5 closest friends are people who I disagree with on policy. And we don't pretend that we agree on everything just to get along. We absolutely do not agree on policy. And yet we have such respect for each other's backgrounds and what brought them to where they are today that we're not trying to change each other's minds. It's not my job to convince anyone to be a conservative. That's between you and God, what you believe and how you show up in this world. What you are responsible for is your character. And what you are responsible for is how you treat other people. And that often stems from what you think about yourself. And so often a lack of identity is found in a lot of external things, whether it's a marriage or it's a political, cause, or it's your job. You can lose yourself in your kids.
Yep.
But if you don't know who you are and really your innate value,
core value system,
right, then you're not going to be able to show up as your best self in anything. So the book is really, it says it's about politics because everyone hates politics. So it's call it clickbait, but it's really about how we show up in this world and treat each other, especially people we disagree with.
So what are your top 3 core value systems and why?
Yeah. So all of my value systems stem from my faith. And so that's kind of the umbrella under which I would say everything, if it doesn't align with who God has created me to be, what he says in the Bible, and who he, through the Holy Spirit, reminds me of in what people will call it your conscience, then it doesn't really matter if it's written or I express it in a certain way. And I think it's actually dynamic. Your core values are really, for me, it's based on who I am, reminding myself that I'm God's child. We all are. Everyone here, it says in Genesis, the book of Genesis, the very beginning of the Bible, all of us are created in the likeness of God. We're children of God. And so when I can look beyond, so that's a core value. I want to make sure I answer your question. But when faith is everything. Family is everything, and truth is everything. So,
and why is truth? I mean, obviously it's easy to say truth. I want honesty, right? Truth. But why is that one of your pillars?
So,
is it because you've had a lot of untruths in your life, or people not showing up for you?
I feel like I've lied to myself throughout my life because I don't think people can do things to you. I'm not a victim of anything. Okay. Bad things happen to everybody, but we get to choose whether we respond as victors or victims.
Wow,
and I just reject categorically any sense that we are not in control of our destiny. We are in control of how we respond to things. And I think a lot of the mistakes I've made, from marrying the wrong person to career gaffes to broken relationships that I've caused that have been my fault, which really hurt me more deeply than probably anything professionally or anything external could. I've made a lot of mistakes in my life. And one of the truths that I didn't understand about myself until I went through this process called the Hoffman process in January was...
I read a little bit about that.
It's amazing. Is how often we lie to ourselves about who we are and how that affects how we show up in this world.
Give me an example.
So we love, as humans, we love to live in shame. We say that we hate it, but it's such an easy place for us to go to just hide from the world, because I think that we don't have any sense of how powerful we can be in this world, because so many of us are afraid to even try. We're afraid of rejection. We're afraid of so many other things that can happen to us externally that people can do to us. But if we know who we are, and for me, when I know whose I am, when I'm God's child, there's really nothing we can do that's beyond his love. And there's nothing we can screw up that he can't help us fix if our intention is to love others. And so I think for so long, I labored under the delusion that I was less than who God said I was. And a lot of the things I did to try to make up for it made me look confident. People would say, "You're so fearless." So
behind the scenes, were you not? So you didn't feel worthy?
Yeah, and I had the best parents. It's not like I had a bad childhood. I didn't have someone abusing me at home telling me I was crap. Is
it because you felt? I'm sorry to interrupt you. Do you feel like you had to put on this front?
I think that, I grew up in the law and politics where everyone's super confident, but everyone's kind of cripplingly insecure behind the scenes. And not everybody, but most people. And I learned how to play the game and fake it till I made it. I think we're all like big, huge onions, and there's so many layers of us, you can never reach the core. We'll always be working on being our best selves, right? And really, truly who God created us to be. There's no end to that journey. but so many of the things that keep us from getting there are the untruths that we believe, that we buy into.
Subconscious or conscious?
I think some of it we do to ourselves, but I think all of it stems. So it could be subconscious. I think for me, I didn't realize I was being who I was.
Limiting belief systems.
And then the conscious things, what we say, the Bible says the power of life and death is in your tongue. And so when we speak things, whether it's out of false humility, we're just trying to be nice, or, we say things because we really are trying to project an image, or we say things that undermine us. We're creating our reality. And I think people underestimate the power of our words.
Big time.
Yeah.
I have an app I use called, I think it's ThinkIf. It's an affirmations app. And actually, it was funny. After I had read this book by Ed Milet, when you came in, you talked about identity, all kinds of cool
so
things.
Good.
In here.
He's a Christian too. He's really strong.
Yeah, and it's a very powerful book, The Power of One More. But in it, the power of affirmations, right? And people I've talked to, a lot of the successful people you surround yourself with, the power of those affirmations, telling yourself. So I literally put this app on 5 minutes before bed.
So good.
Every single night, AirPods in.
Yeah.
And I will fall asleep to it as it's rotating nonstop. And it just
and that's why you're so successful.
Well, but the thing is, like you even say, it's funny, you kind of downplay where you're at, because I feel like regardless of success, and it depends on how you identify it for yourself.
Yeah.
Right. Some people identify it in family, some people professionally, some people personally.
Yeah.
I don't even see myself as that successful really? Because I think you compare.
Yeah,
we
all
easily,
do.
unfortunately, do this. We compare ourselves to others. My business partner, Chris, who he was on the phone with me the other day saying, Justin, are we doing okay? And I wanted to slap him. I said, Chris, dude, let me put some stuff in perspective for a moment. I said, you are so beautifully fortunate. You have 2 homes.
Yeah.
You have a beautiful home in San Diego.
Amazing home.
And you have a 15-acre ranch in Texas.
Yeah.
Beautiful family, 2 beautiful children. Things paid off, taken care of.
Yeah.
I've seen your financial statements, bro.
You're good.
Like, you're good. Uh-huh. Okay. And I said, you're in the top 1% of the 1% in the United States of America.
Right.
But because of his personal thoughts, in also the people he surrounds himself with are even farther above him. He then thinks he's like the crap in the room, which is fair and fine, but you also need to have some self-reflection, self-awareness, and be able to sit there and just have gratitude of like thankful. And I try and do that. I tell people, and I do this for myself every day, is you wake up and you say 3 things you're grateful for.
That's so good.
And I don't care if it's the same 3 things from yesterday.
Right.
And usually it revolves around children.
Yeah.
The fact that I have a roof over my head, and
there's a lot to be grateful for.
Just
to whom much is given, much is required.
Yeah.
There's a lot given.
Yeah. It's pretty wild how you can really question where you're at by looking at the opinions, or not really valuing the opinions of others, but you look at other people's lives and compare it to yours. And I think a lot of people do that through the Insta-famous, Insta-glam.
Absolutely. I think the other thing people do is they look at everything as first of all, you care more about how people perceive you than anyone else does. Like, no one has time or bandwidth to think about you and judge you. Honestly, there's so few people who care enough about anything beyond themselves because they're in survival mode.
Correct.
And so when we think, wow, my car is real crap compared to that person's, they must be so much more successful. I read this, I forgot what it was in, but they were talking about how when people want to drive fancy cars, and I love fancy cars, but doesn't shape your identity, right? It shouldn't. Right. I've met
lots of people that have Bentleys that sleep in them.
Yeah, I'm sure. Well, this is California. Exactly. But when people look at your fancy car, they're not thinking, wow, that person's so cool. They're imagining themselves in your car. They're never actually thinking about you or caring about who you are.
Because, I mean, they say, if you're an asshole before money, you're a bigger asshole with it.
Money is like tofu. It takes on whatever the environment it's in.
If you're an asshole before you had money, you're going to be a bigger asshole.
It amplifies
with
it. Yeah.
So it's that is irrelevant other than the character of the
You guys
person.
are doing great. I just want to affirm that. Chris, if you're listening, you're doing fabulous.
So that's what Denise says, Chris. So you're doing just fine. You'd also mentioned something I pulled out one of these quotes. You said, don't treat passions as a blood sport. What do you mean by that?
Politics.
You said politics. I'm going to put it in as passions because politics is passions for people. So I'm going to say just passions in general.
Yeah, sure. I think
it's too easy for people to pull into corners on what they, in their mind, is very dear to them. Yeah. And that's cool, but not everybody's going to think like you.
That's good. I love the way you reframed it. I think it's so easy for us. This is just a human thing and I'm not Buddhist. I don't believe that we should rise above our feelings and somehow levitate over the world and be disconnected from life. So let this not be confused as to what I'm saying. But I think that there's a really healthy balance that we all need to work to. And some of us have to work harder than others, especially when it comes to our passions, whether it's politics or work or anything, right? Yep. It could be a person. But we have to be really careful that we're not so invested that we kind of get over our skis and end up thinking that this is an existential issue for us.
Yeah.
I think that when we think that what happens, for example, in politics is life, instead of seeing what life is around us, we end up needing to defend it. And this actually goes back. It's easier for me in my faith to actually go back and get a little more disconnected and maybe some perspective, because at the end of the day, God holds all the cards. And so for me, if I believe that God is holding all the cards and he's working everything out for my good, I can say, I'm going to show up as my best and give it my best and let God handle the rest.
Yeah, no, and that's an amazing concept. And I agree with it. I think it's hard for people to put all of that faith on things will happen as they should.
Right.
And it's hard to do that because I agree. You should just show up as your best self, do the best you can do, make sure you are the best version of yourself every day as a high value human being, and then allow the cards to fall where they're going to fall. And
they're not falling. You're actually not letting go. You're surrendering. There's a huge difference between letting go and surrender. Letting go implies that you're dropping it and you're going to walk away. Like, I did my best, mic drop, I'm out.
Okay.
Surrender is actually putting it in the hands of someone, in my case, God, who actually is able to orchestrate everything and says in the Bible that he's working everything out for your good.
But when you're a control freak like me.
I am too. Welcome to the club.
I'm like.
We all are. But
I have a hard time. And maybe it's just because you'll try and rely on people. And I love when I can rely on people and they show up.
Yeah.
Because then it gives you confidence and trust back in it. But it's when you maybe set the scope, set the expectations, you let it be known what you expect, and then you allow people to show up, and then they don't. And that could be professionally, in relationships, whatever aspect. And then the disappointment sets in, and you're like, okay, fine. I just need to do it myself.
Right. I'm the same way.
So then it frustrates you.
It is frustrating.
Because then you just feel like, well, crap, can't rely on anybody. I just need to get it done myself. So then you end up doing all this stuff on your own when you should have a team with you.
And then you fail yourself. Like, what if you don't live up to your standards? See, this is the whole faith thing is really interesting. And I think it's one thing that people maybe need to drill down another, like I always think in terms of drop down menus. Let's drop down one more level. What do we actually have faith in? Because if we have what your story shows, and I deal with this all the time with employees, is if we have faith in people are definitionally limited. We're definitionally going to screw up, right? It's because we're imperfect. And so when we put faith in something outside of a constant, then we're really just, at the end of the day, looking to ourselves to fulfill what it is that everyone else is going to drop the ball on. And we know that going in. There's nobody in any relationship that's going to be perfect and not let you down. And so we accept a certain degree of like, okay, you can screw up X times, right? But then at the same time, you're really never content because your faith was still in that person. So regardless of how few times they screw up, you're still going to be unhappy. If you put your faith in God, you can say, look, I know that I'm flawed. Actually, it turns it back on you. Sermon on the Mount, Jesus talks about pulling the log out of your own eye before you look at the speck in another person's. We talk about righteous anger in politics a lot. People are always like, well, this is a travesty. I have to fight this. Well, how
this
can
is a matter of fact. I love that one.
Yeah,
matter of fact. Like,
what are the facts? There's
no
facts. Right. But people get in their corners when they feel like they're fighting for their existential like ability to survive, right? And that none of that is actually true. If you put your faith in God, then you can trust that even when things look really, really bad, he's working everything out for your good, or he's a liar. There's no in between with God. You either believe him and what he says he is, or he's a liar and he doesn't exist, in which case you better put your faith back on yourself. And how well is that going? Right. So faith, everyone has faith in something, Justin.
I would agree.
Whether it's in people or their business or their financial portfolio or, whatever it is, at the end of the day, it
doesn't necessarily have to be on a religious side.
But I think all of those will fail you if your faith isn't in God.
Yeah, I think you absolutely have to believe in something greater than yourself. That's my personal belief system. Some that don't, that's totally fine. It's up to them. The beauty, there's a great book, and you may like this since you just had a recent passing of a family member. Do you know who Tyler Henry is?
No.
So he was the Hollywood medium guy.
Oh, yeah.
The young kid? Okay.
Yeah.
And I, quite honestly, if I'm being fair, I think a lot of these people are full of you-know-what. He's not.
Yeah.
I mean, if you simply just watch him, and especially the people he's read.
Yeah.
I mean, these are some of the most powerful people in the world.
Right.
And they are crying in like the first 5 minutes because he's not just generally speaking about things.
Right.
He's very direct and very specific, where he's bringing things up and bringing people through.
He's reading their mail.
Basically. Where there's no way this could be therewn without them sitting next to each other in a bed at one night and this person whispers this in their ear. Like there's just, nobody knows this stuff. So he has a book called Between Two Worlds. And I read it when my sister passed about 5 years ago.
Oh my goodness. I didn't know that.
It was, and you talked about the grieving process, and it comes in waves.
Yeah.
Right. You'll have some random weird day where I'll be driving by and my sister loved butterflies and sunflowers. So you'll see that. And she loved Neil Diamond. What was the song? Sweet Caroline?
Yeah.
Was it Sweet Caroline?
That song.
Yeah.
Sweet Caroline.
Yeah. So that was one of her favorite songs. And I'll just randomly hear that and be like, and I'm like a guy and I'm bawling because you hear that stuff.
You're a human.
Right. But then just stuff like that. And it comes in waves. But that book was really instrumental because what it basically gives anyone, regardless of your religion, it gives you the understanding that something happens.
Absolutely.
Something happens. Now, you can believe whatever you want, but something happens because if you think about it like this, if you go to bed every night, it's going to happen today. And there's going to be a moment in time between when you're consciously awake and then you go in your sleep and then 7 hours pass, hopefully, and you wake up. Yeah. And it seems instantaneous.
Or 9 or 10.
Right. And you have dreams and all these wonderful things. But that time span seems instantaneous.
Yeah.
Okay. So imagine tonight you're going to go to bed. You're going to go black. And that's it.
Yeah.
Like nothing, like that's it.
Right.
Like, could you imagine that? Could you actually imagine that actually happening?
Like me just not waking up?
Just black
or just
done.
black.
Like there's nothing greater. There's nothing more.
Yes. I'm not afraid of the future or dying.
But do you think that nothing happens?
Oh, no, right. I don't think that nothing happens.
Like you would just go black and nothing happens.
No, because we're spiritual people living in an earthly body.
Right.
Our souls are eternal. And so, I think God actually speaks to me in my dreams. I get a lot of revelation. I don't want to go 8 hours without hearing from God. And so, I need to hear from God all the time. So for me, there's never a time when there's dead time. There's always, even in the most difficult times when it seems like nothing's happening, if you really listen, there is. What you're alluding to is the supernatural.
Sure,
there's something way beyond what we are not the be all and end all. We're finite. You just said we could go to sleep and we could be done.
Yep.
And so we have a limit to our capabilities. We have a limit to our lifespan.
In this realm.
Right. So, but we live forever, our souls.
And so that book touches on that, which is why I think it's a great read for anyone who just wants to realize that there's another realm.
Oh, yeah.
If you want to call it that. You can call it heaven. You can call it whatever you want.
Yeah.
Another realm that happens.
We live after we die.
And something's going on, and everybody gets to experience that.
Yeah.
There's obviously a piece of me that hopes that evil people go to a different place. But, who knows, right? Well, who knows? I hope that happens, but who knows?
I would hope so too. But that's like our human side that thinks that we're good, right? So then the ego comes back in because we're judging people based on it. And Jesus says, judge not lest ye be judged. There's a way to judge properly, and there's a way that we err on the side of as humans where we think that we're better, but how do we actually know? So on that scale, I'm not willing to risk it.
Right. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Let's talk about TV.
Yeah.
You're currently on The
News
Hill.
Nation. Yeah.
Well, it's News Nation. TV show's The Hill.
Yeah.
And that's in DC.
Yep.
What do you guys talk about? Is it, I know you're conservative, so is that more Republican talk? Is it, do you guys, do you have the ability to call your party crap?
I do.
Okay.
I'm truthful on it. I think for me, I'm not a party hack.
Yeah.
Even though I'm a lifelong Republican, I'm really more of a conservative for one reason. I believe in limited federal government.
Beautiful.
To me, that's really the essence.
So why don't you just become a libertarian like me?
Well,
then you can think Democrats suck, Republicans suck. I'm like a Joe Roganer.
You
right?
are,
Give
right?
me Joe
In the
Rogan,
middle. I love libertarians. Yeah. I think they're incredible. They just never win elections. So I'd like to actually have some impact in this world.
Fair enough.
But I really think that being on the show has forced me to think about how I live out the principles that I wrote about in my book. Because I've always got a Democrat, sometimes on either side of me, that's coming after me and wants to score points. And by nature, I'm incredibly competitive and I want to punch people when they're wrong. And I also want to land a point. That's the lawyer in me. And so if I'm not living out, it's like a constant check on me to say, how am I showing up? Because the real important thing is not that I win a near term, score a goal.
Yep.
The thing is, how does that person next to me feel when they leave the set? Do they feel like I went after them and went for the guttural? Or did they feel like, oh, she respects what I think and she has a different point?
I'm sure you've heard of the term edification.
Yeah.
When you edify people.
Yeah.
So, and usually,
it's one of my love languages. Encouragement, affirmation, edification.
Words of affirmation?
Yes. Okay. It's right up there.
Beautiful. So validation.
Yes.
Okay. So if you may have a disagreement with somebody, typically if you quickly acknowledge what they just said, say, so you said this, this, and this. So they're like, okay, they understand what I just said.
Yeah.
And then you can maybe edify them by saying, oh, well, you seem very smart, but. And then right. Then you go into your side.
That's it. Or like just full stop. Like, tell me more. Instead of, you seem really smart. Right. And then why do you think that? Because so often we would probably agree with a lot of people if we knew where they came from.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. I hear people all the time that I may disagree with on things. But we are all a product of our upbringing. So, 100%. And it's call it 50% your dad, mom, whatever, presuming that's the case. But we are 100% a product of our surroundings.
Absolutely.
So when you have someone, you could even take someone who I adamantly disagree with on either side of that spectrum.
Yeah.
I don't know, who would I think of? Ocasio-Cortez, or what's her name? AOC. Completely disagree with her. Yeah. Okay. But when you understand her background, she starts to make some sense. Then you take someone like Alex Jones, right, on the far right side. I'm like, whoa, that guy's. But then when you understand his background, you're like, oh, okay, I understand maybe why you are the way you are.
Yeah.
And just let them be what they're going to be. Right. And it's fine, right? And you're not changing people's opinions because they come from a core value belief system based on your upbringing.
And what influences people more than you living out the life and being living proof of what it is that you say you believe in, right? Sure. Like results speak for themselves. Yeah. And so live the best life that you can with what you have. And you will change more lives that way than telling people that they're wrong.
Actions speak louder than words, as they say, right?
Yeah.
Interesting. So some quick little fire questions for you on the personal side.
I'm ready. Let's go.
Country music or other?
I love country music. I went through a real hardcore country phase in the 90s. I actually dated like a country DJ.
What?
Yeah. So I had a lot of fun with country for a while, the Garth Brooks era.
Okay. So old school.
I like country. Old school. I like some of the new stuff. Okay. My nickname is Daniqua growing up. So I am like an old school hip hop, rap. The harder, the better.
So are you 90s hip hop? Because that was the best.
I'm 90s hip hop. I don't even know what's going on right now.
Like the best decade of rap and hip hop was the 90s.
We're all in
Tupac,
violent agreement.
Biggie,
Tupac, Biggie,
right? Diddy, or
God rest his soul, rest in peace.
Diddy.
What is he now? Puffy, Diddy. I don't know what he is now. I know. We know.
Yeah, P. Diddy.
Like whatever he was.
Yeah. So anyhow, 90s into the early, there's a 10-year span there that hands down. Eminem, the best.
And then like Nelly and Jay-Z in the 2000s. Right. Like it went on for a while, but now it's weird. It's like, what's crazy is I knew I got old when I was getting ready. I was getting ready to go out in Vegas. I was like it was my birthday party and I was getting ready and I was just dancing or whatever. And I heard a Lil Wayne song. I was 6'7".
Everything recording.
And I listened to the lyrics for the first time. I was traumatized.
Yeah. I can't believe half the stuff they allow on. Oh my gosh. I got to catch it because I got kids.
Yeah,
right? So we're listening to some song, and
you're like, no.
There's a song that my daughter loves with the female rapper
Cardi B.
Yes,
Danger.
And she comes on and starts saying,
"You're like, no,
got my something wet." I'm like,
yeah, oh yeah.
My daughter's
no
like,
way.
I'm like, no. She's like 7. I'm like, no. She doesn't even know what she's listening to, right?
Yeah.
But I'm like, I'm like turning the channel on me, and she's like, I love that song, Dad. I'm like, no, you don't.
No, remember in 7th grade for me, I remember the song "Color Me Bad." It was like, I want to sex you up, and I was like, I couldn't even play it in my car.
Sex you up.
I couldn't even play it in the car. I was mortified. I can't even watch TV with my mom and dad when they make out. Like it's anyway.
Wow.
I still have issues with that. I don't listen to rap anymore, but I love the old stuff.
Wildest night you've had with your girlfriends?
Oh gosh,
and you can go back on this.
I mean, probably need to because now
dancing on tables, maybe Vegas, maybe not.
Yeah,
maybe,
are you kidding me? Okay. If there's not a table involved, then are you really dancing? I mean, like
you tell me. You tell me.
I mean, I love dancing. I probably got this from my parents and their first date and their legacy of dancing. But
51 years.
Yeah, 51 years. Yeah. We were a dancing shows sort of, Showtime kind
Running
of family.
Man or Roger Rabbit?
Maybe the new kid.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Although I've done it all.
The Charleston?
Listen, I can't go that far. I don't know about the old stuff.
But tell me about the wildest night. That's good.
I'm trying to think. The last time I had a wild night, I don't know how you define wild. For me, wild is being with all of your closest girlfriends. It's probably kind of disappointing to your listeners and to you. But my friend had reached out and got us this incredible penthouse suite at the Palazzo. And it was insane. Yeah. And just being able to get ready with all the girls. And I don't know, something about girls getting ready together, something men will never understand, but being able to talk about everything while you're listening to your favorite music in the background and then having just a series of just great experiences. I love EDM. I love EDM. Okay. I kind of got out of it for a while. I'm back in. And just being able to dance all night to an incredible beat with incredible, I don't even remember I think it was Avicii. And just going after it and just getting sweaty and taking off your shoes and just with reckless abandon, just dancing with all of your heart. I actually threw a rave in Rancho Santa Fe.
You threw, that's
for my 46th birthday. Yeah, I think I invited you.
Glow sticks.
Yeah, glow sticks, all the glow, glitter. And it was so much fun. It's the biggest high. I love it.
Okay, so EDM, but what about Chill House?
I can do that. Channel 52 on Sirius XM.
So Wild Night in Vegas, Palazzo.
That's
was
more
this
loungy.
Straight out of the girls' version of Hangover, or was this?
Well, minus the tiger, minus Mike Tyson.
Minus Mike Tyson.
Yeah, I think if you put all my Vegas experiences together, I've done the UFC championships, I've done all that stuff, so we could piece together all of that minus the over the topness.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I think I was telling you, I was down at a conference recently in Miami. So Mike Tyson was one of the speakers.
Oh, wow.
He
wasn't
right. These are intimate.
Does he speak? Does he actually speak?
These are, this was the craziest interview, 2-hour interview. It was the day after the Tom Brady one.
Oh, wow.
And these are pretty intimate interviews. You got Patrick Bet-David and Tom Brady. You got Patrick Bet-David interviewing Mike Tyson, and so forth. But Mike Tyson, it's literally like a man between two realms of his life, right? Because we all remember the Mike Tyson of filled with rage as a young man and just murdering people inside the ring. And you have that guy. And then you have now this Zen.
Is he?
Just very calm, new man, new perspective on life. Really? Religious. He's obviously Islam, but just seeing kind of very Zen guy that is very wise. And I'm like, what in the world happened? So there's people that did Q&A with him, and they asked him, Mike, when did you decide you wanted to, when was the remaking? Because you've had such wild moments in your life that it's been very publicly displayed.
Yeah.
And we've watched this man filled with rage. And he's like, yeah, that's true. But I don't feel like I've remade myself. I feel like it was always there.
Oh, interesting.
I was just didn't know how to bring it out. And we're like, oh, that's interesting. And then we're like, so what brought it out of you? And he looks at Patrick and he's like, psychedelics.
Oh, wow.
He's like, DMT and ayahuasca.
Really?
Yeah. And he says, that's when I started experiencing that stuff. It allowed me to get into my inner soul. This is him speaking. and bring out this human being that was always there, just didn't know how to come out.
Yeah.
Because he was always front loaded with this rage.
Yeah.
Right. And he even says that rage is still there.
Yeah.
It's just now tucked away. And now this front man that's now very much controlled human being in a way.
Yeah.
Wise in his mid 50s. And it's just crazy. Cause I mean, it's literally two different human beings that we see.
Yeah.
But in his mind, he sees the same human just at different stages in life.
Yeah.
Wild interview. And like he's so sporadic because he like got up and he's like, I need to go to the bathroom real quick in the middle of his interview. And Patrick like looks at him going, what do I do? Like, okay. So he like walks off stage. You can't keep him. And like while he walks off stage, people are laughing and Patrick's like, and somebody asked him like, you let him leave? And he's like, what do you want me to do?
Yeah.
Tell him no? It's like, could you imagine if you're at my conference and then all of a sudden, somebody says, did you see like Patrick Bet-David got knocked out by Mike Tyson?
Who really need to go to the bathroom.
Like this thing went viral, right?
Yeah.
So there was a, kind of a candid moment with Patrick on that, but it was incredible watching that with him. So.
Yeah. Well, the psychedelics thing is interesting. So I actually work with a group called Healing Breakthrough where we're advocating in Congress to help get MDMA assisted therapy to veterans through the VA system. Yeah. Yesterday, MAPS, the group behind all the clinical trials for many psychedelics, and MDMA is actually not a psychedelic, it's an entheogen. So it doesn't have a hallucinogenic element to it. So it's often mischaracterized as a psychedelic, but it is often grouped in that same mind-altering world. And the reason is because it shuts off your amygdala's fear response. So it enables the actual therapy that people have in conjunction with it to work, because people are able to access the root cause of trauma.
Sure.
And so what they found, and this was just released yesterday, it's in all the newspapers today, New York Times, everything. They're talking about MDMA-assisted therapy and the clinical results, which is that after 3 phases of clinical trials, there's about a 67% cure rate for PTSD that the average trial participant had for 14 years, which is it's a miraculous thing.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited to see what happens in that world.
Yeah. And I mean, I haven't done it yet, but I'm probably going to.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that have and kind of give their experiences on it. I think you have to be prepared for it and ready for it and be guided correctly, because there's people that do it. Yeah. There's people that do this correctly and guide you through the process of it. So we did that. I was going to ask you if this is probably a fun question. If I took you out of the room right now and I brought in both your parents and I interviewed them at that table.
Yeah.
How would they characterize you?
Well, my dad characterized me, and when he was toasting me at my wedding, as the person who's failed the most and landed on her feet more often than he ever imagined possible.
You're
he
like
said,
a cat.
Yeah. And I was like, Dad, this is my wedding. Like, it made me focus on how loving and amazing I am. And he was like, Denise is one of the people that I just have never understood, because she's taken risks that make no sense. And I've always been somebody who is willing to step out in faith to do things that I felt called to do, regardless. And usually it was against incredible
odds.
Yeah, odds, and also like resistance.
So running for Congress?
Yeah, nobody wanted me to run for Congress.
Hands down. I mean,
you're biased.
I am biased.
I appreciate your bias.
You and candidates were both great candidates.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, holy cow! I mean, you would be spectacular in.
Thank you.
Just purely based on your intent to help.
Yeah. Right. And I think everyone desires to help, but I think they would say that I'm fearless. I'm kind of stupid sometimes because I do things that make no sense. And I think they would say I feel like I led my parents towards faith more than they did to me. Okay. And I think they would just say, Denise is consistently faithful, and we've seen the change in her life since God came into it.
Beautiful.
Which is really the best compliment they could give me.
I would say so.
Yeah.
So when you have free time, what is your go-to joy?
It's funny. I used to just be obsessed. I was a big triathlete when I was here. I used to be obsessed with just being outdoors. And
did you do Ironman?
I did. Yeah, only one though. Okay. One and done. But I kind of rolled with a group of professional triathletes.
I've had enough of that shit.
I rolled with a group of professional triathletes when I lived here, and was just really inspired to be the best I could be in every aspect of my life, including physically. When you do an Ironman, you feel like there's nothing you can't do.
I bet.
But then sort of the joy of that, like getting a new car or any achievement that you kind of make in life, like, you know, Chris asking you, am I successful? Like, hi, you've early arrived, buddy.
Yeah.
You know, we are always looking for the next thing. And what I've found is that my greatest joy comes from relationships.
Yeah.
And so really, I think the way that I spend my time now is when I could go out for a run and somebody wants to talk to me that I'm very close to, that's life-giving for me. It's not just everybody, but I'm very selective about who I give my time to. I will prioritize relationship over the things that I thought used to give me great joy. If I'm 5 pounds heavier or 10 pounds heavier on any given day because I have prioritized relationship over, you know, workout or anything else, it's okay.
Yep.
I'm happy.
So you're 80 years old. You're on your deathbed.
Yeah.
What does that, and it's your last day. You know it's your last day. Okay. What do you want, one, that to look like, and two, people to say about you when you pass?
I really hope it's a party. I hope that I can tell everyone it's my last day so that they all show up. Because, you know, the only time everyone you love shows up is for a funeral or a wedding. Yeah. And I think that's such a travesty.
Or when you know, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's such a travesty. Like, I feel like we should show up and be intentional about showing up and doing all the things we're so glad we did more often, but we just let life get in the way. So I would want everyone there. And I forgot the second half of your question.
You're 80 years old. You're on your deathbed.
Who's there? Who's going
there?
on?
And what do you want people to say about you? What do you want that conversation to look like? Are there people that you would like there that you missed out conversations with, or that you would like some closure with?
You know, what's interesting. I really released the notion of closure, especially with my divorce, to God. I feel completely healed, believe it or not, maybe because I went to the bottom of the bottom of the barrel. I completely bottomed out when I was going through my divorce. And I think you kind of have to bottom out in order to come back up and rebuild. So there's really no people. I mean, if I don't care about that for closure, then everything else is kind of secondary, right? I live my life in a way that I don't allow myself to not engage in forgiveness or a conversation. It doesn't have to always be a conversation, but I have to be okay with it in my heart. If there's some offense between myself and somebody else, I can't live like that. And so I really think that I'm going to be surrounded by the people. I'm only going to invite the people that I love the most. So there won't be people that I don't want there. Okay. Maybe I'll hire like a bouncer at the door just to make sure. Don't rain on my parade. It's my party and I'll do what I want to.
Stand outside and look inside.
Yeah. You can wish that you were closer to me. But I just want to tell everyone how much I love them over and over and over and over again. I don't want to be known for anything. I just want to be known for really loving them well.
Beautiful. I love that. Worthiness. Do you think you struggle with worthiness?
I did, for sure.
Why?
It goes back to the beginning of our conversation where I really didn't understand that I had innate value based on who I was, not what I did. I don't struggle anymore because I take, and maybe this is what happens when you turn 40 and you are on the other end of your life, the second half. I think of life in terms of I turned over like the hourglass and I can see like the days of our lives, like screen coming on. These are the days, like sands in an hourglass. These are the days of our lives. Okay. And now I'm in this thing of like, oh my gosh, I only have half of my life left to live. Yeah. And what am I going to do with it? And what's going to have lasting impact? And so, I forgot the beginning of your question.
No, that was it.
That was it. Okay.
And I think I know the answer to this next one.
The worthiness. Yeah. So
if I were to give you $1 million in cash, or 1,000 people that you can have relationships with.
This is easy.
I know the answer.
Yeah.
But go with it.
Relationships all day long. You can die with all that money. Most people do. I have so many friends who've died, or my friends of my parents who've died, who had every toy in the world and a fat bank account. And they had all the security of knowing that they could pay their way out of it. But I want the security of knowing that I have a network of people who are going to stand by me no matter what. That's all that matters to me.
Yeah. There was somebody that said a great quote the other day that I thought was awesome. And someone had asked them, like, what is success to you personally? Like personal success, not professional, personal success to you in your life when you pass on. And they had responded, personal success for me is when people can't easily forget me when I pass on.
Yeah. They want to be significant.
Well, yeah.
Or have made a difference.
Or they've had such an impact during their life that people can't easily forget them. Yeah. So, I mean, you can think about people right now. I mean, I can think of Kobe Bryant. Yeah. I can think of Robin Williams. I can think of a handful of other people who
made an impact.
Even today, when you think of their passing, you're like, oh, like, man, I wish that person was still here. So they were starting to have this impact or did have that impact, or you can't easily forget them, whether they're famous or not.
Absolutely. So. I think that a lot of parents think about their legacies and their children as their legacies. Like, you have such an impact, you're leaving something behind, and it's a person, and what you poured into them, hopefully they take on for the rest of their life.
Yeah. And even with that in mind, and maybe it was Grant Cardone that said this. He said, you have these children, but don't let your children ruin your dreams, because a lot of people, mothers and fathers, like you said, the identities in the children.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Obviously, children do go off. We grow up and we move on and do our own lives too. And then you feel like, gosh, you see the empty nester syndrome. And I'm watching even friends of mine that they were, moms and dads, and then the kids are starting to leave the household,
like,
and all of a sudden they don't know what the hell to do.
Who am I?
Right, and then their relationship with their spouse wasn't that great, so that falls apart, and then everything else falls apart because they had their identity in this one thing, and they didn't have other things, that the dreams and the passions for themselves, and actually allow themselves to be a priority too.
Right. No, 100%. I don't put any of my identity in my golden retriever, just so you know. I don't have kids.
Come on.
I know.
What is your golden retriever's name, by the way?
Jack.
Jack.
He's the cutest. He's 11 though, so I'm glad. I don't know how much time I have left with him, but I make the most of it.
There you go. I love it. Well, actually, we're close to time. Anything else you'd like to chat about before we finish
I really
up?
love what you're doing, Justin. I think it's funny because I know you sort of in bits and spurts here and there, and I'm such a fan of both of you and Chris. And I think what you're trying to do, the perspective that you have on being able to give in the overflow, you're not getting for yourself. This is not about you. Of course, there's you benefits, but as you live out what you believe, you're pouring into other people's lives, you're elevating the conversation. And I think it's really remarkable because it's clear to me that you live by a creed that is something that's going to have lasting legacy.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's this buddy of mine, Jeff Fenster, right? I'll put his book up here too. So this is relationship bank accounts. Okay. What you recognize with this after I read it, he's a San Diego boy here.
He looks like a San Diego boy.
I know, backwards hat. He's ready to go. He's from Scripps Ranch. Like, I love it. Like we connected. It's ridiculously successful. And what you pull out of that is just understanding the importance of the relationships, how you have to deposit, right? Yeah. Because there's a lot of people that just create a relationship and then they withdraw. We all have people that have done that to us, and there's only so much time.
We've been married to people who do that to us.
Take. And then there's somebody you're like, this is not design. You got to withdraw, you got to deposit, and over deposit, right?
Yeah.
And then there becomes a point where you can withdraw naturally, and that person's like more than willing to give because they're like, you've given so much to them. But without those relationship bank accounts, right, and relationship capital, and understanding that withdrawal and deposit process, man, I mean, relationships go sour quick.
It's true. And my goal is always to show up and give all of myself as much as I can. And I don't stress about actually doing it in concert with the other person at the same time or pace, because I know it always comes back around. But as long as I know that my intention is to be for them, I'm always for my friends. Yeah. And even if that's just like a hug that they get from me, it may not be something that manifests in any real way. I think that's meaningful.
Yeah. And people had asked, you said kind of like your cause and purpose. So with the Abundance2Give podcast, I mean, the whole concept is Abundance2Give, because everybody says, in order to kind of, if you give, and you create abundance in your life.
Yes.
And it came by way of actually that man in the other room, my son, Brody.
Yeah.
And his sister Everly, and one day they're sitting there watching YouTube, and this was probably 2-3 years ago, and this guy by the name of Mr. Beast comes on YouTube. And do you know who Mr. Beast is? Okay, Mr. Beast. I cannot believe you don't know who Mr. Beast is.
I don't have kids.
Okay. So this is literally the passion behind the Abundance2Give.
Wow.
So Mr. Beast, this is back, several years ago, he'd started a YouTube channel, and he was just playing video games. right? And had a couple thousand subscribers. Nothing, anything. People weren't
on camera. He was playing video games.
Just camera, playing video games. People would watch him play video games.
Wow.
I know. This is
I wish I could make money that way.
I'm like, Jesus, like this is a career? Okay, great. But he wasn't getting that much traction.
Okay.
He flipped it one day and he started filming him with his friends going into places like Best Buy, random stores. They would put tape on the floor, cover it up, go grab a random person in the store and say, come over here. Open up, pull off and said, fill anything in the circle in the next 5 minutes, you get it.
Wow.
Just giving out free shit.
Yeah.
And then people would lose their minds, right? They're running around the store. There's,
what?
I mean, so of course it's materialistic stuff and they're stacking on. But what you got to see is how, I mean, he now is the #1 guy on YouTube. He has over 120 million subscribers.
I've never heard of him.
It's outrageous. The guy,
oh my gosh.
But the point being is that he gave.
Yeah.
Right? Literally free stuff, like buying people houses, cars, Lambo, just crazy stuff. This is the craziest thing you've ever seen. And it's created so much abundance for him now.
Yeah.
Hence Abundance2Give. So this is literally created with the same concept that, man, like if we could help give back to the world, and this is inspired by Mr. Beast.
Yeah.
What a great concept, right? To give. And then
remarkable.
Of course, law of reciprocity.
Yeah.
It comes back. So
I actually live by that. The Bible talks about that a lot, about how if you give, you really can't outgive God. Right. And so it's whatever your motivation is, doing it is
genuinely
incredible.
without any expectation.
Exactly.
Right. Yep. So Mr. Beast, if you're watching this, like, let's hook up.
Props.
Brother. I mean, I'm sure you got a lot of people pulling at you now.
Well, he's inspired this, which is incredible.
There we go. So someday, maybe if this is big enough, we'll be able to collaborate.
We'll do Mr. Justin.
We'll do Mr. Beast.
What would we call it if
Justin.
it's you? Yeah, Mr.
Justin. Beastie Brennan.
How about
Brennan?
Beastie Boy?
Abundance2Give and Mr. Beast. I don't know. We'll bring Brody and Everly on. They'll be the sellers, right?
Perfect.
I can't sell anything.
Yeah, they're so cute.
Well, thank you for coming on. This has been a joy.
Thanks for having me.
It's been a lot of fun. And
it's good to be back in San Diego.
Your book, real quick. I know we talked briefly about that, but you need to buy this. Amazon, where's it going to be at? Like, where can people find you?
Already on pre-sale. It comes out on bookstores, but who goes to bookstores anymore? On November 14th.
Yeah, Amazon.
It's been on Amazon since January. Politics for people who hate politics. How to engage without losing your friends or selling your soul.
We're changing the tagline.
Yes.
How to show up for people you disagree
email
with.
My publisher.
Maybe they have time. How to show up for people you disagree with. I don't know.
I love it.
Just a thought.
You're good at this.
Just a thought.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much,
Signing off.
Justin.
Thanks, everybody.
Yep.